Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. I'm here to tell you today that astronomers across the world for decades are complete absolute idiots when it comes to the UFO and extraterrestrial subject. They don't know what they're talking about. But unfortunately, mainstream news outlets always seem to turn to astronomers for some reason, I don't know why, when it comes to the question of life coming from other worlds here to Earth. And for the most part, over all these decades, since the birth of the ongoing UFO problem since 1947, for the most part, astronomers across the world have provided nothing of worth at all to this topic at all. They don't really research it. They do nothing except sit on their duffs, and they ridicule it along with many people in the mainstream news because of things that the government has talked about and lied about over decades. That's what they've been doing. They're useless. They're completely, absolutely useless when it comes to this subject, and they should not be considered experts. They're not. They're not experts. They're experts at theorizing about how long the universe has existed, how many galaxies there are, how many planets there are, how many suns there are out there. And it's amazing, actually, when you really think about it, because the stuff that astronomers actually talk about, the facts of the situation of that they know, that they are experts. And when you look at what they do talk about, you would think that they would be open to this subject and more interested in it, in the fact that there are things here. There is an extraterrestrial presence here on Earth. Do you think they would take some of these reports more seriously? But they do not. For instance, Neil deGrasse Tyson, probably the most famous astronomer we have these days. Very interesting personality. He's written a number of books. He's always on TV promoting his latest book. He was just on News Nation recently talking with Elizabeth Vargas. And he had some interesting things to say, and I'm going to go through some of these things. Let's see what he had to say here. He said... He was talking about the bodies, the alien bodies, the corpses, the ancient corpses that were found in Nazca that they're talking about in Mexico right now. And he's talking about that. And he says, now that they have them on display, that's intriguing. They look awfully humanoid, by the way, to have come from another planet. Scientifically, this is a start. And now we say, share the data with other people, share tissue samples so that other labs can investigate. That's how we roll, scientists. That's how they roll. They look at. I actually agree with them on there. I think that the tissues and all kinds of evidence that's being extracted from those alien bodies. Well, they're listed here as mummies, but they're really not mummies. But any kind of that should be shared with scientists across the world, so we can come to a consensus as to what these beings are. Are they actually beings from another world? Are they actually non-human, human-shaped creatures? Is that what are they? I mean, we need to figure that out. So I do agree with them on there. But for the most part, this is a guy who basically ridicules the subject of extraterrestrials, makes dumb statements on a regular basis about it. Like, for instance, he doesn't understand why, if somebody's getting abducted by an alien, why don't they grab an ashtray when they're inside the spaceship so they can bring it back and show it to us? Things like that. He has no understanding of this phenomenon whatsoever. That's something that seems very difficult for an abductee to do. And he's also been very critical of David Grush, the whistleblower, the former Air Force official, who's saying there is a government crash retrieval and reverse engineering programs. So he's critical of that. He says he wants him to show the evidence. And Grush, he doesn't have the evidence to show. He was talking with people. What part of the story of David Grush doesn't Neil deGrasse Tyson understand? Grush was talking with people working in these programs. He was shown documentation that corroborated what these people were telling him. He doesn't have the end-all proof to show up on News Nation and show the world. He doesn't have access to that. Though you could have to imagine that these things are under top security. There's nothing anybody can do, most likely, to get that evidence and bring it out into the world to show everyone. That's just something that's I would find very difficult for anyone to do. And then some of the other things he's been saying. He does believe that there's life out in the universe. He says this, here's a direct quote. He says, "I can tell you that I wouldn't be terrified if the universe were filled with life. I mean, that'd be great. We're here. That would be just fine. Let's learn more about them." Well, Actually, why aren't you trying to learn more about them? I mean, you had people over the decades talking about this. There's been physical trace evidence that's been collected. Have you ever looked at that? There's been objects that have been removed from alien abductees by people like the late Dr. Roger Lear, unearthly objects, implants. Have you ever studied that stuff? Have you ever looked at some of the very compelling video and photographic evidence? Have you ever given that any consideration? See, none of that's considered evidence as far as astronomers like Neil deGrasse Tyson are concerned. It's just not. But they don't do anything. They don't try to get any more evidence. They hear the stories. There is some evidence out there. There's physical trace cases where there's evidence after these things land where vegetation is burned and there's indentations in the ground. Sometimes there's footprints. But they don't really care about that kind of thing. They don't want to look into that. They're not interested in it for some reason. Instead, they're more interested in, like Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's more interested in showing up on TV and to sell his next book, to promote his next book, and then sit there and laugh and chuckle about UFOs and extraterrestrials, for the most part. Anyway, let's look at this article a little bit more from News Nation. Of course, I'll leave the links for everything that I'm sharing here. He's talking about David Grush. He says, if he's got aliens in a locked box somewhere and no one can see it, that's the same thing to a scientist as having no alien at all if it can't be shared with the scientific community. Okay, well, David Grush personally, obviously, does not have that evidence in a locked box somewhere, but there are people within the United States government that do. And people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, instead of ridiculing the people that experience these things, that see an extraterrestrial or see UFOs, instead of ridiculing those people, he should be demanding that the United States government release this data on this stuff so the government could... So the people scientists like himself, could study it and understand and try to come to some kind of understanding of exactly what's going on. But he doesn't seem to be interested in that. In fact, from what I gathered from this recent interview, he seems like he's more interested in helping with the cover-up. He says this. He said that if, according to News Nation, Tyson says the military should study UAP if they found them, but pushed back on the idea that everything about them should be disclosed if the information puts the public at risk. And here's a direct quote from him. He says, if there's something we don't understand flying around, yes, military, go check it out. And if it's a threat to us, do something about it. That's what we pay you for. There's a Pentagon that's charged with figuring this out, and I would expect some of that to be classified. We recognize that the United States military is making an informed judgment about what they withhold from us and what they don't. Well, let me tell you, they've been making an informed judgment now for over 75 years, for 76 years now. Since 1947, there's been an informed judgment where they're not letting anybody know, nobody know outside of a certain group that they've hand-selected to know what's going on, to know what they know, to know that they've been retrieving crashed objects that are not of this world, right? They don't want anyone to know about that. And so obviously it seems like Tyson's all A-okay with this. So now I get it, right? There's some aspects of the of this cover-up that I understand why they're covering it up. For instance, the reverse engineering aspects of it. You don't want some enemy country to know what you learned via reverse engineering recovered extraterrestrial craft. That's completely understandable. However, the rest of it, the extraterrestrial reality parts of it, those aspects of it need to be released to the public. That information needs to be provided to the public. But apparently Tyson along with other astronomers for the most part for decades, this is how they are. They're useless. They don't provide any sort of good information. They don't provide any sort of good suggestions or advice on how people who want disclosure should move forward. Instead, he sits back and for the most part ridicules it and makes dumb statements. Grab an alien ashtray next time you're abducted. That's absurd. That's ridiculous. But anyway, I want to talk about, I was reading one of his books. This is Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. Now, I just want to point some things out here that he says in this book. It starts off here, in the beginning, and this is the beginning of the universe, right? In the beginning, nearly 14 billion years ago, all the space and all the matter and all the energy of the known universe was contained in a volume less than 1/trillionth the size of the period that ends this sentence. Okay, now I want you to consider what he said there. This is what astronomers like Neil deGrasse Tyson contend, that this entire universe, right before the Big Bang, was a small smaller than the period in the piece of paper that is in this book. Smaller than that, 1/1,000,000th the size. And then all of a sudden, boom, there's a big bang, and here we are, right? Well, the human race wasn't here for a long time yet, but the universe was formed, basically, in that one instant, right? From that tiny, smaller than a period that you see in your magazine, right? Smaller than that, all the way to this vast universe that we are part of right now. Now, I find it hard to believe that you have astronomers who are able to easily go on TV and ridicule this topic on a regular basis for decades now, but yet they're not considering what's happening here. What is going on right now with this entire existence? I mean, for instance, think about this. Okay, right now we're on this big giant ball. It's called Earth, and it's spinning at 1,000 miles per hour. Meanwhile, it's spinning around the sun at 67,000 miles per hour. The sun and the entire solar system, meanwhile, is spinning at 448,000 miles per hour. The Milky Way galaxy, which is with this solar system, along with a whole bunch of other solar systems that are part of it, it's spinning at 1.3 million miles per hour. And then there's all these other galaxies all around us. There's as many as 400 billion other suns in the Milky Way, along with a trillion planets in this galaxy alone that we are in. And it's estimated that there are as many as 2 trillion other galaxies in the universe. As many as 2 trillion. We don't really know. These are just all estimates, of course, but you see where this is going. Meanwhile, there are over, and I've talked about this before, there are over 700 quintillion planets in the universe, and 1 quintillion has 18 zeros. 1 quintillion contains a million trillions. And then the Milky Way, along with the 2 trillion other galaxies, they're teeming with life. There's no question, right? It's obvious. I mean, with the massive number of other planets in this universe in which we live, within just this galaxy alone, and the other galaxies all surrounding this galaxy, there's no question. It's teeming with life. They're coming here. There are all kinds of things coming here and checking us out. And then here's another one. The universe is 13.8 billion years old. Now, just recently, earlier this year, there was some other scientist who now claims that he believes that it's 26.7 billion years old. But whatever the case, astronomers, scientists, they've determined that Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. Now, as far as human beings, we've only been around here the way we are now for about 200,000 years. That's about it. Okay. The earliest hominins are thought to have appeared as early as 7 million BC. The earliest species of the Homo genus appeared about 2 million to 1.5 million years BC. And we've been around for about 200,000 years. That's more or less. Now, when I was growing up, I was taught that there's 9 planets in the solar system. Now, of course, that's changed now. Now astronomers have told us there's really only 8. They kicked Pluto off that list. Pluto's now considered a dwarf planet, along with a few other ones. So we have all these. We're in this solar system. We're on this ball floating around in this vast void of space, spinning at incredible speeds, right? In multiple different. The Earth is spinning. The Earth is revolving around the sun, and meanwhile, the galaxy that we're in is revolving around the universe. And you're going to tell me, you're going to sit there and laugh at people who experience extraterrestrials, see UFOs. You're going to laugh at people who say that the government's covering this up. You're going to point a finger at them and show and demand that they show the proof, instead of going to the government and demanding, hey, the government, you need to come clean already. The world needs to know about this. But of course, that's not the case, of course, as we know. But I'm going to go back to Tyson's book here. I just want to read another section here. This is from page 32 from his book, Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. What happened before the universe? This is what he writes. What happened before the beginning? Astrophysicists have no idea, or rather are most creative ideas have little or no grounding in experimental science. In response, some religious people assert, with a tinge of righteousness, that something must have started it all, a force greater than all others, a source from which everything issues. A prime mover. In the mind of such a person, that something is, of course, God. But what if the universe was always there in a state or condition we have yet to identify, a multiverse, for instance, that continually births universe? Or what if the universe just popped into existence from nothing? Or what if everything we know and love were just a computer simulation rendered for entertainment by a super intelligent alien species? These philosophically fun ideas usually satisfy nobody. Nonetheless, they remind us that ignorance is the natural state of mind for a research scientist. People who believe they are ignorant of nothing have neither looked for nor stumbled upon the boundary between what is known and unknown in the universe. What we do know and what we can assert without further hesitation is that the universe had a beginning. The universe continues to evolve, and yes, every one of our body's atoms is traceable to the Big Bang and to the thermonuclear furnaces within high-mass stars that exploded more than 5 billion years ago. We are stardust brought to life, then empowered by the universe to figure itself out, and we have only just begun. Now, isn't that very nice that he writes something like that? But consider, I mean, somebody who thinks this way is not going to give the time of day to reports of people experiencing extraterrestrial encounters or seeing UFOs. They're not going to really give that any kind of consideration because he says, along with a bunch of other astronomers, that there's absolutely no evidence. But there is evidence. There is evidence. Just because Neil deGrasse Tyson and a lot of his astronomy kinfolk, because they don't believe that they can't cull anything just from simple reports, doesn't mean it's not real. They just haven't done their homework. They're lazy. They bring nothing to this whole debate over what's going on here. Nothing to the UFO or extraterrestrial reality. They just bring nothing to this argument, really, except they're just like, they're debunkers, basically. That's what they are. They're debunkers. They don't want to address the situation that's going on right here, right now, for decades, and who knows how long. Really, we really don't know. It's just that we really didn't start noticing these things until the 40s, and by this point now, of course, as we all know, we've all come to certain. Some of us have come to certain conclusions about what's going on. It's extraterrestrial, or like some people assert, it could be interdimensional or whatever, but there's an intelligent life among us right now. But these people in the astronomical professions, for the most part, have turned their backs on this. They don't want to study it. Instead, they'll look through their telescopes. People like Neil deGrasse Tyson, they'll write their books, they'll go on TV, they'll further the stigmatization of this, and they just don't seem to care. And I don't know why we're looking at these people. I mean, you're going to try to tell me that all of these cases over the years, right? Some of them, okay. Let's say, for instance, just let me pull one out of the top of my head here: the Westall 1966 incident in Westall School in Melbourne, Australia, where like 200 to 300 kids and staff of a school saw flying saucers flying around and jet fighters coming after them, and then the flying saucers playing a game of cat and mouse with them. Some of the saucers came down to the ground, then flew back up, flew away at incredible speeds, right? And then you have a whole bunch of dumbbells, debunkers over the years, all saying, it was a balloon. We all know it wasn't a balloon. We have the people who were there, right? The witnesses, many witnesses, right? Many. The people who were there said that these were solid silver objects flying around, doing things that aircraft that humankind had invented cannot do. You look at something like the Lonnie Zamora case from 1964 in New Mexico. I mean, that was a police officer. He sees in the desert right outside of Socorro, New Mexico, right outside in the desert, he comes upon a landed flying craft, a flying egg-shaped craft with two diminutive beings walking around it. When they see him, they get inside the thing, and the thing takes off, blasts off, and then silently just drifts away. That's not something that human beings made. That's extraterrestrial. There's just so many different stories, so many different cases, so many. The Pascagoula 1973 incident, those two guys, Calvin Parker, Charles Hickson, right? They get abducted while they're fishing on a dock in Pascagoula, Mississippi, by three robotic type of creatures that floated out of some craft and then dragged them in. right? All the and that these are just famous cases I'm bringing up. There's tens of thousands of stories like this, right? And then these people, they tell their stories, and what happens to them? They get ridiculed. And people like Neil deGrasse Tyson and all these other people, astrophysicists, astronomers, whatever, right? They'll show up on TV and say we have no evidence, there is no proof. But what about all these witnesses, these eyewitnesses? If the case of the Ariel school, like I've talked about before, the 1994 incident in Zimbabwe, the Ariel school, and all those school kids saw landed flying saucer and alien beings, one of the alien beings speaking telepathically. If that were to go to court, right, it would be a proven fact after the after the verdict was delivered that they actually did see what they said they saw. Right, it'd be deemed extraterrestrial. It had to be. What else could it be? I know from my own experiences that I've seen these things. There's things out there, but yet these people just can't get on board with it. They just don't want to go near it because they're afraid it's going to affect their careers or something. I don't know. More so in the past than today, and that's why I say people like Neil deGrasse Tyson need to start. They should be banging their fists on the table and demanding that the government release what it has on this and let the world know the truth already. I don't know how anybody could study this or look at the data that's been compiled to this point and walk away thinking it's all a hoax. The whole thing is a giant hoax, or all these people lying for decades. That's impossible. It's impossible. In addition to that, we have all the photographic evidence, all the video evidence, the Turkey UFO videos from 2007, 8, and 9 with Turkish fishermen. You actually have evidence, videos that were deemed authentic by experts, video experts, and scientists from 4 different countries that looked at it and said this was not a hoax. These are true anomalies, and nobody's lying about this. And they're alien beings. You can see them in the ship. And here we are. We're still playing these stupid games. You have Congress, actually. Obviously, people in Congress right now, they wouldn't be talking the way they are. They wouldn't be trying to pass these. They wouldn't have tried to pass that UAP Disclosure Act if they didn't really know that something's going on. They obviously know. They've seen enough behind the scenes stuff that the public hasn't seen yet. Obviously, they've talked to some people, some other whistleblowers. We know this, right? There's been like 40 whistleblowers that have been, at least, right, that in addition to Grush, we don't really know all of them yet. Some of them are starting to come out and talk about it, but there's a lot of people that are starting to tell the truth. I mean, did Neil deGrasse Tyson ever do any real research into this, or is he just trying to sell his books on TV and make fun of it just because he knows that's people will get a kick out of it, or some people will, not people in the UFO community, of course. People in the UFO community are upset about this. They're upset about how astronomers handle this. There was an article I found online today, and I got to go through this. To me, it's absolute fiction. It was from Universe Today, and this article was from 2022. It was published, and to me, it's absolute fiction. It says here, it's talking about humanity's going to have to wait for another 400,000 years before they'll be able to contact alien civilizations. The whole problem is we're already been getting contacted with. I know, I saw one of these beings with my own eyes, right? When I was a kid, I know, right? I've seen one of the craft on a different occasion, of course, like I talk about all the time. With a witness. They're already here. And then you have tens of thousands. We don't even know. I don't know how many different reports there's been, different people stepping forward over the years talking about what they experienced. But it has to be in the millions by this point, right? But anyway, you read this and it's like, why? These people are living in a different universe than we are. Maybe Neil deGrasse Tyson's right about one thing. Maybe there is a multiverse, and there's parallel universes or something. Because to me, right, they're just completely ignoring the UFO reports, the extraterrestrial encounter reports. They're ignoring all of it. But listen to some of this story, and it's like fictional. It's actually almost laughable. It says humanity will need to survive about 400,000 years if we want any chance of hearing from an alien civilization. What? We've already there. We've already heard from alien civilization. They're here. Our government is hiding this fact from us. They're hiding evidence that would support this reality. That's what's going on. But anyway, let's continue here. It says, if there are so many galaxies, stars, and planets, where are all the aliens, and why haven't we heard from them? Again, this is absolutely absurd. They are here. We have heard from them. There's been millions of people over the decades talking about seeing UFOs, obvious craft that were not manufactured by humans, right? There's been people, tens of thousands of people who've talked about alien abductions. There's been thousands of people who talked about seeing aliens, encountering aliens and landed craft, seeing aliens walking around. They're here already. Well, what are these people talking about? It says, those are the simple questions at the heart of the Fermi paradox. Of course, the Fermi paradox says if there's all this life out there, where are all the aliens? Well, I talked about in the past before, the Fermi paradox is garbage. That doesn't hold any water. It's stupid. It's dumb. Why are we still talking about the Fermi paradox? I mean, I don't get it. You have people, again, David Grush testified under oath about the reality that we have recovered extraterrestrial craft and that we are reverse engineering it. Right? He testified under oath. He if he's lying, that means he goes to jail. He's not lying. And there's a whole bunch of other whistleblowers too, who we haven't heard from yet, who've testified behind the scenes that we don't know about. Anyway, it says here, in a new paper, a pair of researchers asked the next obvious question: how long will we have to survive to hear from another alien civilization? Their answer: 400,000 years. Well, let me tell you, we've already heard. This is totally wrong. We've already heard from them. We already know. They've met with us already on numerous occasions, multiple people. It says here, 400,000 years is a long time for a species that's only been around for a couple 100,000 years and only discovered farming about 12,000 years ago. But 400,000 years is how long we'll need to keep this human experiment going if we want to hear from any alien civilizations. That's according to some new research into communicating extraterrestrial intelligent civilizations, or CETIS. C-E-T-I-S, not S-E-T-I-S, like the other one. It says here, the paper is called "The Number of Possible CETIS Within Our Galaxy and the Communication Probability Among These CETIS." The authors are Wenji Song and He Gao, both from the Department of Astronomy at Beijing Normal University. This paper is published in the Astrophysical Journal. And here's a quote from it. It says, "As the only advanced intelligent civilization on the Earth, one of the most puzzling questions for humans is whether our existence is unique," the authors state. "There have been many studies on extraterrestrial civilizations in the past decades. There certainly have been, even though it is difficult to study something we're not even sure exists, but that doesn't stop us." Okay, let me just stop there for a second. Okay, it's already here. Again, this is written by some astronomers, right, for an astronomical journal, right, talking about that we don't know what's out there. That's because you're not looking at what's here already, what's coming here, the presence that is here already. You're not considering any of the evidence that has compiled over the years. Again, these astronomers are completely useless when it comes to this topic. They've completely dropped the ball on this one. Completely. They've let us down. They've let the human race down. Astronomers, for the most part, not all of them, there's a handful of them, right, for sure, that are on a different side of the equation here, but these guys here, they don't even know what they're talking about. They have no idea. This is complete, absolute fiction. It says here, "Studying other civilizations in any way is confounding because we only have one data point, humans on Earth. Still, many researchers have tackled the question as a kind of thought experiment using rigorous scientific guidelines. One study from 2020, for example, concluded that there are likely 36 CETIS in the Milky Way." Okay, yeah, there was a study. I want to stop there for a second. There was a study done in 2020 that said there's potentially 36 other civilizations, intelligent civilizations in the Milky Way alone. But then 2 years later, just 2 years later, in Forbes, here's an article that I was looking at from Forbes earlier. 2 years later, another study comes forward saying that there could be 42,777 intelligent alien civilizations in our galaxy, scientists say. So which one is it? Anyway, let's continue here. It says, "How many CETIS might exist is tied up with how long we might have to wait to hear from one. We have always wanted to know the answers to the following questions. First, how many CETIS exist in the Milky Way? This is a challenging question. We can only learn from a single known data point ourselves," the authors write. Well, we could probably learn something from our own governments, because I'm sure that the United States government, for instance, has an idea of at least some of these civilizations, because some of them here came here and they crashed in their craft when they got here. How many do we know? How many different kinds have crashed here, or are they all from the same place? We should have. They should have some idea, but these people don't even consider that. That's not part of the way they deal with things. Then it talks about the Drake equation. It says, based on our growing knowledge of the Milky Way, the Drake equation tries to estimate how many SETIs there may be in our galaxy. The Drake equation has its flaws, as many critics have explained. For example, some of its variables are little more than conjecture, so the number of civilizations it calculates isn't reliable. But the Drake equation is more of a thought experiment than an actual calculation. We have to start somewhere, and it gets us started. It got the author, and then here's the article states, it says it got the authors of this new study started too. And then the researchers said, most studies on this problem are based on the Drake equation. The obvious difficulty of this method is that it is uncertain and unpredictable to quantify the probability that life may appear on a suitable planet and eventually develop into an advanced communicating civilization. Anyway, it says here, if you're skeptical about any of this, you're not alone. We can't know scientifically how many other civilizations there are, or even if any exist. We're not knowledgeable enough. Let me just stop there for a second. We know that some of them exist because some of them are here. People have seen some of these beings. They're here. They're coming from someplace else. Again, I was talking about earlier, some of the numbers were what we're looking at here. I mean, the size of the number of planets in the Milky Way alone. We're talking about a trillion planets in this galaxy alone. And then there's over 2 trillion other galaxies. There's most certainly other intelligent life out there, and some of that intelligent life has figured out ways to travel through the expansive distances of space to get here. And I believe what's going on here, if you look at all the different reports, there's all kinds of beings, right, that people run into. Now, of course, it seems to be the grays or they seem to be the predominant ones that people see. But again, there's so many different kinds of reports and so many different kinds of beings. There's the 10-foot tall, 9 to 10 foot tall beings that those people in Las Vegas encountered earlier this year. I mean, there's who knows. I mean, it's how many could be out there? Well, they probably don't even know. The aliens themselves probably don't even know, right? The ones that are coming here, the ones that are extremely way more advanced than we are, they probably don't even know. But the reality is that they do exist, and they're here. They're here. These people are missing the boat. They don't get it. They're useless. They're useless when it comes to this subject. They need to just stick to their theories about the universe and the galaxy and everything else, and just, I don't know why they're not experts when it comes to this subject. Why are they always being asked these questions when they're brought on TV? I don't get it. Anyway, I'll finish up with this article. It says, so how did they come up with 400,000 years if we don't even know how many SETIs there might be? It says the pair of researchers aren't the first to tackle this question. Their paper outlines some of the previous scientific efforts to understand the incidence of other civilizations in the Milky Way. For example, they reference a 2020 study estimating that there are 36 SETIs in the Milky Way. That number came from calculations involving galactic star formation histories, metallicity distributions, and the likelihood of stars hosting Earth-like planets in their habitable zones. That paper clarifies that the subject of extraterrestrial intelligent and communicative civilizations will remain entirely in the domain of hypothesis until any positive detection is made. But they also point out that scientists can still produce valuable models based on logical assumptions that may at least produce plausible estimates of the occurrence rate of such civilizations. I'm not going to read the rest of this article. I'll leave the link so you can check it out for yourself. But I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that they just don't consider the evidence that we already have here. Like, none of it counts. None of it. I mean, even though there is some hard evidence that goes along with this, like for instance, the objects that were removed from alien abductees, objects that make no sense, that they shouldn't be there. That why aren't they interested in finding out about those, about learning where they came from? Why aren't they interested in the physical trace evidence left behind by these craft? How come they're not after the whistleblower David Grush talked this earlier this year. Why aren't they demanding that more information come out? That the government releases information? Instead, what do? They say, "Oh, we just don't believe him for the most." That's basically what they're doing, right? Oh, I don't know if I believe what David Grush says. That's what they're doing. But yet, even before David Grush, there's been different whistleblowers that have talked about this. There were people who. For instance, I've been reading some Leonard Stringfield. He's a late investigator who did a lot of research into crash retrievals from the 70s into the 90s before he died. There's a lot of cases out there, and a lot of people have talked to Leonard Stringfield. A lot of them had to do so anonymously because they were afraid of the repercussions. But he did talk to a lot of people, a lot of credible people. We have alien bodies on ice. There's no question about it. You need to do your research. You need to start these astronomers, right? They need to demand that the government release this information, make it public to the scientific community. Because right now, for people like me listening to these astronomers, they're making fools out of themselves. They sound like absolute morons. Because it is real, despite what any debunker tells you, what anybody tells you out there, right? I'm telling you right now, this is real. They're really already here. There's something here. Anyway, I guess that was the point I want to make today, is just the fact that I just believe that astronomers, they need to get it together, because they need to get a grip. They need to get a grip on this. They sound like total absolute idiots. They are completely. And you know what's funny about them too, even Neil deGrasse Tyson, a lot of the stuff that they do, it's a lot of theory. There's a lot of theory out there, right? I mean, again, I grew up believing that there were 9 planets in the solar system. It turns out, guess what? That's wrong. Pluto's not a planet, they say. It's a dwarf planet, so that doesn't count. Okay, they make mistakes. I mean, they've been telling us for years it's 13.8 billion years old, the universe. Now somebody else is saying it's 26.7 billion years old. Which is it? A lot of their stuff is based on theory, right? But they're saying that it's one of these things. That's what they try to make it sound like that, but they don't consider anything that's really going on here on this planet, on this ball that's floating out in a void of space. They're going to tell me that that's too fantastic to believe, that there could be other beings out there that are way more advanced than we are, that were around probably long before we even developed. For all we know, they could be 1 billion years more advanced than we are, and obviously they figured out that they've come in here, but they don't want to believe that. They don't want to accept it. Instead, they want to talk their own theories. That's okay, their own theories, but they don't even want to consider evidence. There is evidence here already. There's more evidence of UFOs and extraterrestrials on Earth, right? I'll say this. There's more evidence of that than some of the theories and some of the assertions that they put forth. Again, I was under the impression there were 9 planets in this solar system. Now, they were wrong. Anyway, moving on, I want to talk about the recent Spotify poll. For the episode Trapper Reported UFO Crash in 1865 Montana / Avi Loeb Wants Feds to Disclose UFO Truth, I asked this question. What did Trapper James Lumley see crash in Montana in 1864 or 1865? Now, there's only 34 votes so far. 3 people, or 8.8%, say it was a meteor. 5 people, or 14.7%, say nothing, he was lying. And the majority, 26 people, or 76.5%, say extraterrestrial craft. I mean, if he's not lying, and here's the whole problem. I don't know. Now, the reporter that interviewed this guy, if you listen to that podcast, the reporter that interviewed this guy for the St. Louis Democrat back in 1865, said that this guy was very sincere and he believed him. He felt compelled to believe this guy's story. And if the guy's story, if he's not lying, and there were actually hieroglyphics on this object that he saw crashed, then it had to be extraterrestrial. What the hell else could it be, right? It had to be. It must have come from out of this world, right? So that's all I could say. So I'm going to go with the majority on this one. I'm going to say that it was an extraterrestrial craft because we don't know. I could be wrong about this, but I think it was an extraterrestrial craft. So that's where I'm at with that. Anyway, I want to say thank you all for joining me. Until next time.